Welcome to the Recovery Toolkit podcast. I'm Richie. I'm going to be your host. Throughout the series, we're going to talk to a range of different people who will give you tools and tips to help manage your recovery. The podcast itself is being brought to you by Epic Restart Foundation, who are a national charity who support people to rebuild a positive life after gambling. So welcome back to the Recovery Toolkit podcast. A little bit of a different episode this week, and we are joined by Joe, who is coming back on the podcast for the second time. Today's conversation, we want to talk about a topic that is very rarely spoken about in the gambling harm space, and that is lapse and relapse. So Joe, with that in mind, tell us why we might be going to have a conversation about lapse and relapse.
I know exactly why. So at the end of April, beginning of May this year, I did have a lapse. I was in a very dark place, and I got to the point I didn't care anymore. And, you know, it only lasted a day or two. And then I decided, well, I was panicking actually, because obviously I work in this space. I was thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? I'm going to lose my job. What are people going to think of me? You know, because I felt like I had to be, you know, invincible, I guess. But, you know, I went back to work and I rang you, didn't I, straight away. And I told you, I did contemplate before, like, running away, or shall I not be here anymore, just because I was frightened of what was going to happen, basically.
Yeah, and that, you know, what I would say from the outset, Joe, is well done. Well done. We've spoken about it a lot lately, and having the courage to own it, I think, is so important. And for me, that's what you've done. You've done it straight away. You know, there was lots of fear, there was lots of uncertainty, didn't know what was going to happen, didn't know, you know, how it might impact your job, all that sort of stuff. But the reality is, you still had the courage to come and speak about it. So I think there's a lesson in that straight away for anybody. If you're struggling or you've lapsed, you know, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world at all. It might feel like it, and that's fine to feel like it is, but in that moment. But I think it's really important that the sooner you own it and the sooner you speak about it, the less chance it's got to snowball and become a much bigger problem. Something else you said in there, Joe, was I was in a dark place. What were the kind of signs, do you think, now that this might have been going to happen?
I isolated myself. I was drinking more alcohol than usual. I wasn't, you know, practicing self-care. I couldn't be bothered to get dressed, or, you know, all these things. I didn't do anything. I didn't go out on my walks. I didn't do any of my hobbies or anything like that. So the signs were there. I just was in a place where I didn't care at that point in time. And, you know, although I was so frightened to talk about it and tell you, you know, one of my most important values in life is honesty. And, you know, I've done the whole lying thing, and that's not me anymore. So that's what made me decide, look, I've got to be open and take whatever consequences from this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. So important. Honesty. Like, if we're not honest with ourselves, you know, we're going to struggle in recovery, aren't we? We're going to come in, something's going to come out and bite us on the arse, no problem. When you talked about some of them, like, warning signs, you know, you weren't looking after yourself, you weren't doing the normal things, I think it's important to say that we're human. We're human. You're human, I'm human. Yes, we work in the gambling harm recovery space. Yes, we've got lived experience. Yes, all of them things. But first and foremost, we're human beings. And we're allowed to have hard times. And it doesn't matter how far you get in your recovery, you're probably going to have a period where you struggle. You're also going to have a period where you're ecstatic and life's fantastic, but you're going to have periods where you struggle. And that's part of the journey. Sitting here now, gone through what you've gone through, looking back in reflection, what's been the biggest lesson?
Well, if I'm looking back at my first, like, years ago, I had a relapse. And that was because I didn't reach out because I was too scared. So, a lapse turned into a full-blown relapse. This time round, I had a lapse and I did reach out. So I've definitely learned that, reaching out, has prevented me from going into a full-blown relapse. And I think I just need to be more aware of what's going on around me. I was going through a difficult time. Certain things happened in my life that was unexpected. And I wanted to escape, basically. But I think I just need to be aware and reach out sooner, I guess.
Yeah, so important. Learn a bit from the first lapse that turned into a relapse, and then this time you've done something completely different. You've just said, help. And I think that's important, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's scary, really scary, because like you said at the very beginning, you didn't know what that might lead to or what journey that might take you on. Was it as bad as you thought?
Absolutely not. Like in the beginning, once it had happened, I was beating myself up. I felt like the worst person in the world. I felt awful. And, in my head, I was telling myself like, oh my God, everyone's going to think bad of me, and I felt that there'd be so much stigma because obviously working in this space, I felt alone. But that was all in my head. You know what I mean? Like we have a close, group of colleagues, don't we? All of us. And, we can be open and honest. But at that point, I felt like I was alone. I felt like because I work in this space, I didn't know who to turn to, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And I get that. And, I think we've had lots of conversations since then. And what I admire most is the brutal honesty that you've brought. You said it's one of your biggest values now. I'm seeing that every day. We speak most days now, making sure we're in the right place and you're doing the things to look after yourself. But most importantly, you tell us when you are, you tell us when you're not. It's that simple, isn't it? And I've got so much appreciation and, respect you so much for doing that, Joe. I think that's a huge asset, not just to us as an organisation, but to yourself. You've come so far. I think you've got to recognise that. I also get that it was scary. Tell us a little bit about why it was scary.
I guess because I felt like I have to lead by example. So obviously the people who we support, and I've told everyone, I'm 4 years gamble free, and now to have a lapse, I guess I was ashamed of myself and embarrassed. And obviously I didn't know if I was going to lose my job. So it was really scary.
Yeah. Lead by example. What does that mean?
I don't know. It's just a term I've heard.
Yeah, when we talk about it all the time, isn't it? Let's not just talk about and coach people, but let's make sure we're living that life. The fact that you owned it, Joe, from, it was a day or two after that you'd done it, that you rang me and said, look, this is happening, and I'll be honest. That's setting the example. Like, that's what I want you to focus on, is you set the example of what to do in that situation, so don't sit there and go, oh, I'm not setting a good example. You're setting an absolutely amazing example for somebody, because by you taking that action meant you could then take the next steps. Maybe we'll talk a bit about them in a minute, but if you hadn't actually owned it there and then, it would have went round and round your head, it would have festered, it would have snowballed, it would have probably continued, but you didn't. So never ever sit there and think, because I had a lapse, I'm not setting an example. It's what you do next that's important. And I think that's the really important message to come out of this chat we're having, is whatever's in the past you cannot change. All you've got control over is what you do next. And if you do the next right thing, you've got a chance. And you've done that. So that's where we want to put our time and energy, is in what's the next right thing to do. Had you ever thought about what you might do if you'd lapsed?
I did. I thought, well, in my head, I always told myself, I'll speak to people. I'll reach out to my family or to you guys at work or friends. But I was in a place of, I don't want to do that. I don't even feel like being here anymore. You know what I mean? So I don't care. So I knew what I had to do. I just, at the time, I couldn't.
Yeah, but you did.
Well,
You did do it,
I
didn't
did,
you?
yeah.
So, and it's something we talk about a lot, isn't it? Is like, do you have an action plan in place just in case that happens? And I think it's important that people do to have them conversations, you know. So I've spoke to a few people in my support networks and said, if it ever was ever to happen to me, this is the text message I'm going to send you and this is what it means. I then need you to do X, Y, and Z to support me so that actually we can move forward from it. And it just makes that a little bit easier, you know. If you're ever faced with it, then if you've already had that conversation, it just makes it a little bit easier to do. It's not easy, just makes it a little bit easier. It also makes everybody else aware of what's expected of them as well, rather than just saying it and then everyone going, whatever, you know, catastrophizing, blowing something out of proportion. There's a plan in place, and this is what it looks like. So I know we've had the conversations, and the fact you did reach out shows that you had the courage, and that's important to recognise, I think. What happened next then? So all them thoughts going through your head, oh God, I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to kind of do this, I need to be the example, I'm in recovery, I'm working in this space. Once we had the conversation, then what happened?
I felt so relieved. Obviously, I was upset, but I felt so relieved, and I kind of had a bit of a realization. You know, I stepped back away from the coaching for a little while, just so I could focus on myself and get into a good place again. Because I stopped doing all the things I like, I've started to go back to the gym, do my walking. I've tried to get a bit more organised in my life, like in my diary, for instance. And yeah, just planning better, and, you know, not isolating and looking after myself, making sure I do like get dressed.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think it's what you're saying there is really important, isn't it? You took some time away from frontline delivery to focus on yourself. You then mentioned planning. Why is that so important to you, Joe? Or why is that been so difficult in the past, and now you think, actually, I need to try and plan a bit better? I'm
not the most organised person ever in anything I do. I normally just wing it and see what happens. So I think with work and stuff, I was just getting overwhelmed with, you know, we're supporting quite a few people, and I was just getting in a right mess and overwhelmed by everything. And because obviously I'd stopped going for my walks and looking after myself, it all just sort of spiraled. So now I'm going to try and I've started going through my diary now to get more organised.
Yeah. It's so important though, isn't it? And one of my favourite sayings that one of my coaches said to me was, if you don't plan for success, you basically plan for failure, you know, and at some point it'll all come back and bite you on the arse. And the other thing you see is, if you don't plan for a good day, you'll have a shit day. And I think there's so much truth in that, isn't there? That I hate being organised, and I'm not. You know, I think there's a few of us in our team, you know, where we look at each other and laugh when people go, let's put a process in place, let's put a system in place, let's do this, let's do that. And me and you and definitely one other, I'll look at each other and go, oh, fuck. Because it's our biggest dread, isn't it? Mm-hmm. You know, we just learn differently. That's ultimately what it's about, isn't it? We just have different ways of working. Mm-hmm. And we are chaotic, aren't we? Let's be honest.
We are.
Let's be honest. Me and you are chaotic. But the fact that we have a little bit of a loose plan in place just helps us deal with that overwhelm, doesn't it? Helps us deal with that, you know, real uncertainty that we probably struggle with. So a little bit of chaos, it's all right. We're used to chaos. We've survived in it for years. But we just need a little bit of a plan in place, don't we? Mm-hmm. The other thing you mentioned there was self-care. What does good self-care look like for Joe?
Making sure I'm eating properly, seeing people, not isolating, you know, getting dressed, even like brushing my teeth and, you know, just looking after me, having some relaxing time and, you know what I mean, listen to music. I stopped doing that for ages. And I stopped doing me singing, which I've only just started doing again. And no, I'm not going to sing.
As if I'd ask you to sing, Joe. Yeah, and that's what normal looks like for Joe, isn't it? So that's what normal, let's say good self-care, or if Joe's in a good headspace, that's what normal looks like. But my normal looks completely different. So I think a lot of the time in recovery, people go, well, actually, if they're doing this, this or this, then they're not in a good place. But it's not that, is it? It's like, it's if they're not doing what's normal. So I think it's really important for people. So it's important for you, it's important for me that we understand what our normal looks like. It's also important that those around me, my friends, my family, know what my normal looks like, because they'll see me not being normal, if that makes sense, whatever normal is for me. They'll see me not being normal before I'll see it in myself. So they can call us out. And I've got some really good friends that'll call me out on my bullshit if I'm isolating, if I'm not going in the sea, if I'm not turning up to run sessions, if I'm not doing that type of stuff, which is good for me, they'll see it before I do. So it's important that our friends and family and our support networks know what's normal. So now I know what's normal for Joe, and I go, Joe, have you been going out for a walk? If Joe says no, it's like, what's going on? Do you know what I mean? So It's easy to have them conversations, isn't it? And I think this is all part of the journey of recovery is, let's understand ourselves. Let's raise our self-awareness and understanding so that we do identify those times when things aren't quite as normal as they are. Whatever the fuck normal is. But that's a struggle. Around working in this space, I think that's a big thing, isn't it? What do you think's important for people in this space, working in this space, or want to come and work in this space? What do you think's important that they have in place or the organisation have in place? What's helped you through the last few months?
Well, I think that, like, in regards to work, I think that, there needs to be a clear, open policy of, what would happen and all that, because obviously I didn't really know, I've seen the policy, but I didn't really understand it. And, I've made up the rest in my head.
Yeah.
And I guess if anyone wants to work in this space is, make sure that you're in a good place in your recovery. And obviously we know that, it's a journey and no recovery is perfect, but, reach out and talk, be open. And like you said, find out what's your type of behaviours and what's normal and what's not.
Yeah, definitely. Something you mentioned there was like policy. I think it's important that there's policy in place and we get that. But at Epic Restart Foundation, every person that comes into our organisation, we work with them in a very person-centred way. And what we learned was that policy probably wasn't fit for Joe. So we actually had to meet Joe where she was at, and out the back of that, we've changed the policy. Like, ultimately, that's what's come. But that's a good thing, because we're all learning all the time, aren't we? We're on a journey. Epic Restart Foundation's on a journey. Gambling harm space is on a journey. All of these things are great topics for conversation. And again, it doesn't matter what's gone in the past. It's about what we do now. So when we had that very first conversation, I was like, what do I do? And I'm like, oh God, what do I do? And I'm like, well, what do I do? I've got to be human. I've got to meet Jo where she is. I've got to show empathy. I've got to show understanding. I've got to make sure she's all right. Like, how do I put you at the front and centre of everything that goes on? And then most importantly, we've got to include you. It's not about us going away and making decisions as managers or whatever. It's about going, let's work together. Let's work together and make sure that we've got everything in place that's going to support you, first and foremost, to look after yourself in the first instance, and then work out what the future might look like in terms of work. And I think we've done that really well. Like, between us, me and you, and a few others, I think we've done that well in Epic Restart Foundation, and we've kind of learned from this experience. So again, be the example. I think that's allowed us to understand what good looks like, and if it happens with anybody else in the team, probably will. We're a lived experience organisation. It's part of the journey for a lived experience organisation. It's also part of the journey for any human being that's in recovery.
Absolutely. And, I just want to thank all of you for, supporting me and making me feel that I'm not, you know, a bad person and stuff like that. I've felt really supported.
Just a cool story, Joe.
And I've been given the space to look after myself again and get back to a good place. And I really wanted to talk about this because I said to you, didn't I, when I'm feeling better, I want to talk about this openly. Because I think it's important for myself to talk, and also for anyone else struggling, because, you know, I think what I have learned is talking changes everything, doesn't it?
Yeah. You saying that, Joe, I got goosebumps a little bit, like, because it's so important. And it's one of the things you said very early on after it happened was like, you know, when I feel ready, Richie, I want to own this, and I want to talk about it, because I'm definitely not going to be the first person, and I definitely won't be the last person that this happens to. And I think as an organisation, we pride ourselves on offering hope and inspiration to people. And that comes in all different ways, shapes and forms and sizes. And what you're going to do by talking and, you know, doing this podcast, Joe, is showing that this is reality. We are human, you know. Anybody else out there that's struggling, it's okay to put your hand up and ask for help. Doesn't matter where you work, doesn't matter what your job is, it doesn't matter, you know, what your profession is, what your ethnicity is, what your colour is, your race, anything like that. If you're struggling or something like this happens, ask for help and talk about it. What's next then, Joe? Moving forward, what's important to Joe now?
Getting back to doing what I do best, supporting other people, but also making sure that I'm looking after myself as well. And, you know, continuing to do my exercising that I do. My walking is very important every day, just to get out of the house. You know, just looking after me, and get back to being Joe.
Yeah, 100%. A few things you said there. Helping other people, but most importantly, helping yourself, isn't it? And we talk about you can't pour from an empty cup. And working in this space, a lot of people like want to work, and then burn out a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit me as well. But what we've got to do is look after ourselves first. That has to become before helping other people. And when we do that, we're in a better place. You know, we filled our cup. We offer better support. We offer better advice. We're more empathetic. We have more understanding. You know, so we're not just in a better place, but we're actually helping other people get into a better place as well. So really important that you do that. I think the last thing I'm going to mention on it, I think, Joe, is it's really important that you look after you in your recovery, and then you do your job. You know, I think a lot of people that will come into this space go, oh, these now two things are the same, and they're not, are they?
No, absolutely not.
You know, so helping other people all the time is hard work, tiring, physically, mentally, emotionally. But it's not here for you to manage your recovery. It's a job for people. And I think lived experience is so important in supporting people, and so important in the design and the development of programs. But it's also so important that those people with lived experience are looking after themselves first and foremost. And also, I think it's also important that organisations that use lived experience or have lived experience in them have a way of helping them people look after themselves as well, because it is so important. So again, Joe, I'm so proud of you. Like, honestly, I mean that. I am so proud. So proud of the way you handled it. I'm so proud of the way that you've went about looking after yourself again. I'm so proud about how open and honest you are at talking. I'm so proud that actually you work with us as well, because you said early on here that you want to be the example. You are being the example. You know, never ever doubt that, because, you know, Lapse is part of the journey for people, and it's really, really good that you want to own it and share the story. So massively proud of you. I'm not going to say any more. I'm going to start crying.
Thank you.
But yeah, well done, Joe.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Recovery Toolkit podcast. If you took something positive from it, then why not subscribe? If you or somebody you know has been suffering gambling-related harm, why not head over to our website where you can join our community? The link is in the show notes.